It's how nearly every interview begins. Tell me a bit about yourself. But for neurology applicants, this moment matters even more because the path to neurology is not accidental. If you use this moment well, your self introduction becomes more than just a formality in an interview. It becomes your positioning statement. In this video, we're going to take a look at how a neurology applicant can approach this question. My goal is that you'll walk away from this video with some actionable strategies and a real life example. Here's how we're going to do it. First, we'll speak a bit about mindset and structure. After that, we'll take a look at a real life sample answer that uses my APMPF framework. And to wrap it all up, we'll analyze the answer and give you some actionable takeaways. Quick spoiler alert, I'll also be letting you know how you can access my self-introduction worksheet, which can be a great starting point for developing your answer to the question. Tell me a bit about yourself. It's completely free for viewers, but more about that in a bit. For now, let's speak a little bit about mindset, and also we'll take a brief look at the structure that we're going to be using. For just a moment, let's think differently about this question. Tell me a bit about yourself isn't asking for a detailed CV walkthrough or an autobiography. It's really an opening statement. Think like a lawyer giving an opening argument to a trial. Lay out your core message, hint at some points that you'll come back to later, and help orient your listener. And of course, leave no surprises. This is the moment where you plant seeds for follow-up questions, your research experience, your US rotations, and your long-term goals. You don't have to cover everything in your self-introduction. You just have to guide the conversation in a direction that lets your strengths come through in the rest of the interview. So let's take a look at the framework we're going to be using. It's the APMPF framework, which is an omni-interview framework. For now, we're just going to name the components, but if you'd like a more detailed explainer on this, check out my video, Better Self-Introductions. There are 5 components to this framework: appreciation, present, motivation, past, future. This is kind of like your roadmap so that you don't get lost, you don't ramble, or forget what matters. And of course, you can adjust it to your own story and sound natural while still being intentional. Let's take a look at this framework in action, how it works for an IMG applying to a neurology residency program. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. I've been looking forward to learning more about your program and sharing a bit about my path in medicine. I'm originally from China, and I recently completed neurology rotations at teaching hospitals in New York and Los Angeles. I've also been working as a research associate at a neuroscience lab in Boston, where we're studying neuroimaging biomarkers in early Alzheimer's. Through both my clinical and research experiences, I've grown more confident in working across teams, especially in settings where communication needs to be precise and patient centered. I've been told that I bring a calm, focused energy to clinical environments, and that I'm especially thoughtful when caring for patients with cognitive or communication challenges. What draws me most to neurology is the depth and complexity of the field. I've always been curious about how people think, move, and adapt. And I find it both intellectually and emotionally rewarding to work in a specialty that brings together biology, behavior, and long-term care. What motivates me most is helping patients and families of patients make sense of their symptoms, especially when the path ahead is uncertain. And that's where I feel I can make a real difference, not just as a doctor, but as someone who listens closely. I completed medical school at Peking Union Medical College and developed a strong foundation in internal medicine. During my final year, I worked with a stroke rehabilitation team and saw firsthand how multidisciplinary care could restore not just physical function, but dignity. And that experience, it stayed with me. It taught me how to be steady in high pressure moments and open to each patient's lived experience. Since then, I've also contributed to several research projects in cognitive neurology and memory disorders, learning how science and patient care inform one another. Now, as I move forward, I'm looking for a residency where I can build both strong clinical judgment and long term relationships with mentors and peers. I'm especially interested in programs that support resident involvement in research and that care deeply about teaching. I was drawn to your program for its reputation in cognitive neurology and its commitment to patient diversity and supporting diverse populations. Long term, I hope to combine clinical practice with ongoing research in neurodegenerative conditions. I'd be honored to contribute as someone who brings quiet focus, cultural perspective, and a sense of responsibility to the team. What are your thoughts on that self introduction? Let me know in the comments. But for now, let me share why I think that this was such a strong self introduction. First, we'll take a closer look at the strategic seeds that this applicant plants, and then we'll take a look at what works so well in each section before I give you some actionable takeaways on how you can get started on yours. So, first of all, what might sound like a calm summary is actually a highly intentional setup. We're not just hearing about this applicant's path, we're watching them guide the interview. The first thing that jumps out is the combination of US clinical and research experience. The candidate says, I recently completed neurology rotations in New York and Los Angeles. I'm also working in a neuroscience lab in Boston. And I think that that statement alone creates two strong branches for possible follow up, clinical and academic. Depending on what the interviewer cares about most, it gives room to explore US system readiness, scientific thinking, or both. And it signals that this candidate isn't just visiting the field, they're actively contributing to it. Let's take a look at another seed that this applicant plants in the self introduction. They say, I've often been told I bring a calm, focused energy to clinical environments, especially with patients who have cognitive or communication challenges. And this is not something that's self praised, it's carefully positioned feedback. It sets the stage for a behavioral question. An interviewer might follow up by asking, can you give me an example? Or how do you approach these conversations? Give me an example. Tell me about one of them. And that opens the door for the candidate to demonstrate emotional intelligence, adaptability, and neurologic empathy. Think about how they talk about why they chose neurology. The candidate says, I find it intellectually and emotionally rewarding, especially when the path ahead is uncertain. That's a quiet but powerful insight. Neurology doesn't always offer easy answers, and this kind of language shows comfort with ambiguity and a desire to support patients through the unknown. It also helps the interviewer see the applicant as someone who understands not just the content of the specialty, but the emotional weight of it too. Later on, there's this strong experiential moment. The candidate says, during my final year, I worked with a stroke rehabilitation team and saw how care could restore not just physical function, but dignity. And that's beautifully phrased, but more importantly, it plants the seed for a story, a follow up like, what did you learn from that? Or how did the team work together? Gives the candidate space to show who they are in action, not just what they believe, but how they practice. And finally, we get a glimpse of the future. The applicant says, I hope to combine clinical practice with ongoing research in neurodegenerative conditions and contribute as someone who brings quiet focus and a strong sense of responsibility. That's clarity That's intention. It tells the program, I know why I'm here. I know what I value, and I've done my homework. This self introduction is not a list of accomplishments, it's a roadmap. Each detail opens a door to the kind of questions where this candidate is ready to shine. And that's the goal. A strong self introduction doesn't just inform, it invites the conversation that you want to have. Now, let's take a look at the sections in more detail through a coaching and training lens. The present section isn't just a list of where this applicant has been, it's layered. The research and rotations are clear, specific, and relevant. The comments on teamwork and communication show awareness of what it takes to thrive in neurology, especially with patients facing cognitive barriers. The tone is calm and credible. Then, in the motivation section, the candidate reflects on what excites them about the field. Neurology as a blend of biology and behavior, of complexity and continuity. And I think that tells the interviewer a lot about their mindset. They're not here for fast answers or flashy procedures. They're here to think deeply and care long term. This applicant's past section is also incredibly strong. The story of working in stroke rehab is powerful. It anchors the candidate's identity in empathy and multidisciplinary care. It also shows growth. What was once exposure became motivation. The balance of academic and emotional insight is just right. And then the future section shows clarity. The applicant names what they're looking for in a program and how it connects with their long term vision. The emphasis on teaching, on research, and on diversity of patients aligns with what many programs are hoping to see in applicants. And by stating those values clearly, the candidate helps the interviewer picture them as a contributing colleague. So now that we've spoken a bit about why this self introduction works as an example, let's talk about your self introduction. As you begin the thinking process of how you approach your self introduction, let's approach some best practices. First, create bullet points, not full scripts. You're not trying to recite a monologue. Think about it. Writing is linear, speaking is dynamic. I would imagine that in your interview, you want to sound like a real person, someone who's clear, prepared, and reflective, not a robot. By the way, my self introduction worksheet can be a great starting point for exactly this kind of first step. You can request it in the link in the description. I'll be sure to send it out right away. And of course, if you'd like a more personalized approach on your self introduction and interview preparation, count on my help. Let's find a time to speak one on one. My booking link is also in the description. Second, very important, practice by speaking out loud. Even if you're practicing alone, there is so much benefit to speaking out loud. You don't have to record yourself, listen back, and self criticize, but you do have to get to the end of the answer each time you begin it. And let your brain hear your voice. That's how you train for fluency under pressure. Third, as you're practicing out loud, be open to being highly unsatisfied with those first few attempts. After all, it's much better to be unsatisfied while you're practicing than unsatisfied when you're interviewing. And I think that that dissatisfaction is actually an opportunity. As you practice, set a marker at the moments you think you could better make a different point and just keep going. Come back to those markers later and think of what you could say better. This is a natural process of evolution, and great self introductions go through this process. Fourth, identify those seeds that you want to plant in each section. These are the ideas you want to be asked more about. Choose details that invite curiosity, like a rotation, a research project, cross cultural experience. And fifth, very important recommendation, don't memorize or over polish. The goal is not perfection, it's connection. A few pauses or imperfections are completely okay if your structure is strong and your message is real. Don't wait to get started on making progress. Try starting with some bullet points now. Imagine that it's not your first draft, but your zero draft. You can always change them later. And of course, if you'd like a more detailed explainer of the APMPF framework, be sure to check out my video, Better Self Introductions, after this one. So if this video was helpful, hit the like button and share it with a colleague. And if you want to keep building your skills with me and interview like a human, not a robot, be sure to subscribe. I publish new content regularly, so let's be sure that you're in the know. And as you move forward in your preparation, just remember, especially if you're an IMG, you don't need perfect English to leave a strong impression. No magical vocabulary list or grammatical structure is going to get you in a residency program. But structure, clarity, and self awareness are really helpful in this process. Yours is a story that is absolutely worth telling. So just think about what's the best way to tell it. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.